After Clara rejected me, the path forward seemed to clear in a way I hadn't expected. I finally agreed to my parents' long-standing plan for me to continue my studies abroad. It felt less like a choice and more like a necessary escape. The day before I was scheduled to leave, I sat down and methodically purged her from my digital life. I deleted her number, blocked her contact on every platform, and muted anyone even remotely connected to her on all my social media feeds. The thought of seeing her face, even accidentally in a tagged photo, was more than I could handle. I couldn't be reminded of the 7 years I had poured into chasing her, only to end up with nothing. I needed a clean break, a genuine reset. 2 years later, I returned from my time overseas, and my old friends were insistent on throwing a welcome-back party for me. My best friend from college, Mark, took the lead, rounding up our old classmates for a night of catching up. We were in a private room at a familiar bar, the air thick with laughter and stories, when halfway through the night, the door was pushed open. It was Clara. She looked at me, a complicated expression on her face, and bit her lip. "Finally decided to come back?" she asked, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "It must be so great over there. Who's keeping you so busy?" As soon as Mark had heard I was back in the country, he had started organizing the reunion. In the private room he'd booked, nearly all of my close friends from our university days had shown up to welcome me home. The mood was boisterous until Chloe, one of Clara's old roommates, fixed her gaze on me. "Ethan, I'm not trying to call you out," she began, her tone making it clear that was exactly what she was doing. "But you're not the only one who studied abroad. You're the first person I know who just completely ghosted everyone. What, are we not good enough for you anymore?" A hush fell over the room. I just managed a small smile, choosing to ignore her jab. Mark immediately jumped to my defense. "If you have something to say, say it. If not, then shut up. Don't make a fool of yourself." Chloe looked furious at his dismissal and began chugging her drink. Being Clara's roommate, she knew every detail of our history, but this overt hostility still felt like it came out of nowhere. All right. Let's play a game. How about truth or dare?" one of the guys suggested, clearly trying to diffuse the tension and liven things up again. "That's so lame," someone else groaned. "Then what do you want to play, genius?" the first guy shot back. "Let's just start with Ethan." I sighed internally. I have terrible luck with games, so it came as no surprise when I lost the very first round. "I'll take the dare," I said, hoping to get it over with quickly. The dare was read aloud. "Kiss one of the girls here for 30 seconds. Mark cringed so hard reading it that he looked like he wanted to bite his own tongue off. I had never been subtle about my feelings for Clara. Even back in high school, when dating was treated like a forbidden act, I pursued her openly, and everyone knew it. "That's too intense. Let's pick another one," Mark said, trying to give me an out. "No way," Chloe interjected, pushing Mark aside. "The man himself hasn't said anything, so what's it to you?" She stared at me, a clear challenge in her eyes. "Pick one?" "Fine, I'll pick," I said, resigning myself to the stupid game. I scanned the girls in the room, a few of whom started cheering and preening. Mark leaned in, shooting me a look that said, "Don't take this so seriously." The others started chanting, "Come on, Ethan, pick someone." I was actually trying to choose, but my mind was blank. They were all curious, I realized. They wanted to see what kind of girl I'd kiss after spending so many years hung up on Clara. "Pick one! Yeah, let's see which one of us is good enough for you." The atmosphere was so hyped up that I had no way out. I just had to pick someone and get this charade over with. Just as I raised my hand to point, the door was thrown open. Clara walked in, looking like she'd just been caught in a storm, but her expression was even colder than the gust of wind that followed her inside. I hadn't seen her in 2 years, and for a moment, I was completely stunned. "Clara, what are you doing here? Aren't you down south?" Chloe asked, equally surprised. Business trip, Clara replied curtly. From the moment she entered, her eyes were locked on me. What were you guys playing? It looks like fun. She was smiling, but the curve of her lips was ice cold. Oh, nothing, just messing around, someone mumbled. Everyone could tell the mood had shifted dramatically, and they quickly started changing the subject. She walked over to our table, picked up the glass in front of me, and filled it to the brim with liquor. I'm late, so I'll take a shot to make up for it. It was incredibly awkward. That was the glass I'd been using all night. I tried to signal Mark that I wanted to bolt, and he subtly stood in my way, trying to inch us both toward the door. Ethan? My name, called out so suddenly, froze me in my tracks. Clara stared at me and bit her lip. Finally decided to come back? It must be so great over there. Who's keeping you so busy? My first reunion since returning home ended abruptly with her arrival. Standing on the sidewalk a few minutes later, I could feel the summer heat rolling off the asphalt in waves. A black SUV sped past, and for a fleeting moment I saw Clara's beautiful, cold profile in the passenger seat. The exhaust fumes she left behind made the already hot air feel even thicker. Driving with the windows down in this kind of heat seemed so extra, so unlike her. If she was trying to prove to me how well she was doing, there was really no need. 2 years ago, she was the one who had rejected my confession of love. Whether she was doing well or not had absolutely nothing to do with me anymore. What are you thinking about? Get in! This weather is killing me! Mark complained as he pulled up to the curb. I got in the car, and the blast of the AC started to clear my head. Clara showing up like that had been a total shock. You know, she's skipped every single gathering for the past 2 years, Mark said, breaking the silence as he drove. I heard that during the university's anniversary celebration, the dean of her department called her several times, but she didn't show. Even her startup co-founders came. I have no idea what she was so busy with, but in the end, she was really generous and donated a bunch of new equipment to the school. He glanced over at me. You don't think she was avoiding you, do you, Ethan? I scoffed. Avoiding me? Why would she need to do that? She was the one who rejected me. If anyone should be avoiding someone, it should be me avoiding her. Then what was with that comment she made to you? He pressed. She sounded like a bitter ex. I just shook my head. Don't look at me. I seriously have no idea. I gave up trying to analyze it. Clara's bizarre behavior had everyone confused. Mark drove me home to the high-end gated community where my parents lived. Some people are just born on third base, he joked. Anyway, drive yourself next time. I've got to go back to the daily grind tomorrow. I told him to drive safe. He was just complaining for show. Back in college, he helped himself to my family's good liquor all the time. Our friendship wouldn't be damaged by stuff like this. Clara, however, was different. She thought my family's money was the only reason I could afford to be so proud and reckless. Her rejection still echoed in my memory. Ethan, the world doesn't just bend to your will, she had said. You're rich, but if even a single dollar of it was something you earned yourself, I wouldn't look down on you like this. You'll never understand me, and I don't want to be a part of your world. So let's just leave it at that. It's over. If we hadn't run into each other tonight, I might have kept that memory buried for a long time. While I was abroad, I'd often wake up from dreams with her words echoing in my head, my pillow damp with silent tears. It's scorching out. Are you trying to bake your brain? My older sister, Sophie, opened the front door and flicked me on the forehead. I shot her a glare and walked inside, rubbing my head. She just shook her head, a bittersweet look on her face. In the past, her little brother would have pounced on her like a leopard cub, refusing to let go if she teased him like that. Not anymore. I seemed more mature and sensible, but somewhere along the way, I had lost my spark. Work wasn't too demanding. After my team lead realized I wasn't some corporate shark trying to take his job, his attitude toward me softened considerably. I insisted on taking the subway to and from the office every day, leaving the new car Sophie bought me sitting untouched in the underground garage. I had also moved out of my family's house to be closer to work, promising to come home every weekend and on weekdays when I wasn't busy. My family tried to talk me out of it, but eventually they gave in. Sophie picked out my rental, a small, chic apartment in a nice area close to the office. Clara once said that the only hardship I'd ever known in my life was the bitterness of my coffee. I was determined to prove her wrong. The company mixer was super awkward. All the new hires were lined up like products on a shelf. I found a seat in the corner with a few other recent graduates, watching our team lead and the other senior staff fool around. Then came the main event. The boss made his grand entrance, and with him was a special guest, a woman who was graceful, beautiful, and immediately had all the single guys in the room whispering amongst themselves. It was Clara. I literally rubbed my eyes, not believing what I was seeing. Under the bright lights of the banquet hall, her face was even more stunning than I remembered. It seemed like she saw me too, her eyes widening for a fraction of a second. "I'm heading out," I whispered to the guy next to me. "If anyone asks, tell them I went to the restroom." I grabbed my bag, ducked low, and slipped out the back exit. It was only a 10-minute walk from the venue back to my apartment, but I dragged it out for almost half an hour, even stopping to buy an ice cream bar from a convenience store along the way. I was at my building's front door, leaning in to use the facial scanner, when suddenly a tall figure appeared on the screen behind me. Startled, I spun around and fell right into a soft, but surprisingly strong embrace. Her lips pressed against mine without warning. She kissed me without mercy, her fiery lips conquering mine before moving down my neck. Her hand slipped under my collar, and her hot, wet tongue traced a path along my skin. I didn't even have time to react. The air was thick with the smell of alcohol. "Clara!" I gasped, my voice weak. She froze, her head still buried in the crook of my neck, her breathing ragged. "You're drunk," I said, trying to push her away, but her arms only tightened around my waist. She lifted her head, her eyes fixed on my lips, which I realized still tasted sweet from the ice cream. Her breath was shaky, her eyes darkened, and she leaned in to kiss me again. "Excuse me." A neighbor from my building was taking their dog out for its nightly walk, and had walked right into this scene. I was mortified, and instinctively turned to face the corner of the entryway. Clara's face was grim as she moved to stand beside me, composing herself. As the neighbor fumbled with their keys and opened their door to go back inside, I saw my chance and tried to follow them. Clara grabbed my arm, her voice suddenly cold and sober. "Ethan, what are you hiding from? Do you feel guilty? Some things can't be erased just because you hide from them." I had no idea what she was talking about. Mark was right. She was acting like some bitter, nagging ex. "I live here," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Can't I just go home? If you take one more step, I'm calling the cops and reporting you for assault." I quickly scanned my face, got buzzed in, and ran for the elevator without looking back. Life suddenly felt incredibly crowded. Mark added me to our college alumni group chat, and almost immediately Chloe invited Clara to the group too. Mark told me that all their smaller, private group chats were blowing up with gossip, with people placing bets on whether Clara and I would get back together. I messaged him privately. "Dude, she's the one who rejected me. If I go crawling back now, I'll look pathetic." He replied almost instantly. "From what I remember, she's always been rejecting you." I had nothing to say to that. It was true. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spent my entire youth, from high school through college, chasing her. Mark typed again. I've got a feeling that her giving up a guaranteed spot in grad school to chase money has something to do with you disappearing." "That's a paradox," I replied. "I bet a month's salary you two get back together," he sent. "Haha, lucky for you it's not more, or you'd lose your shirt." My confidence was completely shattered the very next day. My boss called me into his office and told me to help a new senior consultant, Clara, move into her corporate apartment. And what a coincidence, she was moving in directly across the hall from me. We went to the supermarket together that afternoon to buy her some essentials. Toothpaste, toothbrushes, towels, slippers. I tossed everything into the cart, useful or not. It was on the company's dime, after all. Clara pushed the cart, silently watching my little shopping spree. "How did you end up working at this company?" she finally asked. "I sent out my resume and they made me an offer," I said simply. I picked up a scented candle and then put it back down. She always liked chamomile. I saw her notice the small gesture, and a faint smile spread across her lips. When we passed the loungewear section, all sorts of pajamas and robes were on display. The large fitting room mirror reflected our images side by side. For a moment, we looked just like a young married couple, out shopping for their new home. He stood beside her, watching her carefully select items, while she would occasionally turn back to ask for his opinion. "Hi, folks. Have a look at our pajamas. We've got a buy one, get one half off deal on matching sets," a sales associate said enthusiastically. Clara looked at me but didn't say a word. "We're not a couple," I blurted out, startled by my own stupid thought. Clara's face fell. To break the awkward silence, I started rambling. "The sign says 25% off for the off-season sale, plus buy one, get one half off." "It's just a gimmick," I muttered, using the opportunity to slip away down the next aisle. Clara didn't say a single word to me the whole way back to the apartment building, and I was happy for the peace and quiet. She insisted on carrying all the shopping bags upstairs herself. As I was unlocking my door, my boss texted me and said I didn't need to come back to the office. I could just head home for the day. That night, the alumni group chat exploded. Someone had snapped a picture of Clara and me shopping together at the supermarket. "Are they living together?" someone asked. Mark replied to the group, "I didn't even bat an eye. Winning these bets against you guys is awesome. Way better than playing the stock market." I gritted my teeth in frustration. The instigator of all this chaos then knocked on my door. She was holding a fruit peeler. "How does this thing work?" she asked, looking genuinely confused. "What a waste of money," I said, gesturing at the device. "There are instructions on the package, or you can look it up online. If that doesn't work, just eat the fruit with the peel on." As I was about to close the door, she slipped past me and into my apartment. My sister Sophie had always been willing to spend money, and she'd decorated my small apartment to look very expensive. "It costs money to visit a zoo, you know," I said dryly. "If you're just here to admire the decor, please make an appointment in advance. I only host visitors on holidays during the day. And on holidays, I always had to go home, so I couldn't host anyone at all." Clara saw the pair of women's slippers by the entryway and smiled. "Good safety awareness," she commented. "How do you know they're not my girlfriends?" I challenged. Clara slipped them on and walked further inside. "Because no one with a girlfriend goes to a company mixer," she said without missing a beat. I followed her, wanting to jump up and smack her on the head. "What's for dinner?" Her question made me laugh out loud. "I'm not your mother." "My mom is always asking about you," she said, her tone softening. "She wonders why that handsome kid who eats so much doesn't come by the stall anymore." I froze for a second, not expecting her to bring that up. Clara's mom ran a small food stall near the back gate of our high school. Whenever she had free time, Clara would help her make skewers. I'd done it too, a few times, but I always ate more than I made. Back then, some people made fun of Clara for it, but she was never ashamed. That was when I first realized she was different from everyone else. "I'll cook. I haven't eaten either," Clara said, getting up to head to my kitchen. "I'll do it," I said, stopping her. "You know how to cook? You used to only make sweet desserts to impress people." Clara's smile was a little sad. "When I was abroad, I couldn't get used to the food, so I taught myself." She looked at me, and for the first time, I could see a deep sympathy in her eyes. I made 2 simple dishes and a soup. Dinner was a bit awkward. We didn't talk, we just ate. Clara volunteered to do the dishes afterward, and I wiped down the table. We had a clear division of labor, and we didn't bother each other. Her job was demanding, and she often had to travel back down south for work. On weekends, I'd go home to my parents' house, and our family cook, Mrs. Gable, would make a huge spread of all my favorite dishes. My phone buzzed with a notification. Clara had sent me a friend request through the alumni group chat. I stared at the screen, hesitating. "Who is it on a weekend?" Sophie asked, leaning over my shoulder, trying to peek. I flipped my phone face down. "None of your business," I snapped at her. "Ethan, dear, is work tiring you out? You look like you've lost weight," my mom said, placing a piece of fish on my plate. "Why don't you come work at the family company? With your sister there to help you, your father and I would feel much better." "My job is fine," I replied firmly. I wasn't a doll to be dressed up and moved around. My whole life, no matter what I did, I always ended up following my family's plans. Maybe because everything came so easily, I never had anything I was truly passionate about. The only exception was Clara. "But your father and I—" My mom started again. "I'm full. I'm going to my room to rest." Leaving home wasn't about not loving them or trying to rebel. I was long past my rebellious phase. I just wanted to do something with my own name, as Ethan. I flopped onto my big, comfortable bed. My phone buzzed again. "Have you eaten? What are you doing?" It was Clara. I must have accidentally accepted her friend request earlier. Ignoring it would be too obvious, but deleting her now would make me look even more guilty. This was so annoying. I furiously punched my pillow to vent my frustration. "I'm at my parents' house," I typed back. Clara simply replied with an "oh," and that was it. Just when I thought that was the end of it, another message came through. "I'll be back tomorrow night." Now it was my turn to just say "oh." That tone, like she was reporting her whereabouts to me, was completely foreign. What her feelings for me were, I had no idea. It was all a mystery. On Sunday, my sister had a blind date, and I went along as her wingman. The guy, David, was well-mannered and spoke softly. After the introductions, he looked at me with a shocked expression. "Ethan, is that really you?" I racked my brain but couldn't place him at all. "I was 2 years behind you in school," he explained. "My older sister was in your year. After graduation, she, Clara, and a few others went south to start a business." He smiled sheepishly. To be honest, I had a huge crush on Clara for a long time. I glanced awkwardly at Sophie, who just shrugged as if she didn't care. I even had my sister deliver a love letter for me, but she returned it. "Clara said she had a boyfriend," David said with a nostalgic smile. I used the excuse of going to the restroom to escape the awkward mess. When I came out, David was waiting there too. "Ethan, you've got to step up," he said in a low voice. "I put money on you and Clara getting together in the group chat, bet." He was such a spoiled brat. In that moment, I kind of understood how Clara must have felt looking at me back then. "You're on a date with my sister," I reminded him. "Maybe you should focus on that." David just laughed. "It's just a business arrangement. As long as the benefits are there, it's fine." He was putting on a good act in front of Sophie, but he was being honest with me. I had to tell her. David blocked my path. "Ethan, at the end of the day, you owe her. When you disappeared after graduation, Clara looked for you everywhere like a madwoman. Professor Miller really valued her, and she had the perfect temperament for academia. But instead, she went south with my sister to start a business. You can't even imagine the hardships she went through. And it was all because of you. She rejected me, I said through gritted teeth. So why was she looking for me? In our entire relationship, I had never wronged her in any way. Mind your own business, I said, sidestepping him. I don't need you to tell me what to do. Sophie drove me back to my apartment, and during the ride, my phone was blowing up with messages from Clara. Taking off in an hour. The airport is so boring. Saw a little stuffed animal that looks just like you. It used to be me constantly bothering her. Her replies were always few and far between. Now the roles were completely reversed. Who is that? You've been acting weird since dinner last night. Something's going on, Sophie guessed, a sly look on her face. I ran into Clara, I admitted. She shook her head with a resigned smile. She really is a ghost you can't shake. What did I tell you? I'm telling you to give up. Dad will never approve. Learn from your big sister and find someone from a similar background. It's so much better when you can both do your own thing after you're married. Suddenly, I felt a little sorry for David. I looked out the car window as the city lights blurred past, the night growing wilder. Her messages kept coming. I wasn't an idiot. Some things didn't need to be spelled out. Summers in this region meant typhoons. A younger colleague at work had a family emergency, so I offered to cover a business trip for her. I didn't tell Clara I was leaving. The flight out was smooth, but just after I landed, the typhoon changed course unexpectedly and made landfall in the coastal city I was in. The convention center was on the outskirts of the city, and in this weather, there was no way to leave. I was bored out of my mind in the hotel room as the storm raged outside. The typhoon knocked out the power on my street. To make things worse, my phone was at less than 30% battery, and I'd forgotten my power bank. I called my family to let them know I was safe and carefully switched my phone to battery saver mode. But the battery icon still turned an alarming shade of red around midnight. I started to feel a growing sense of unease, wishing for the storm to pass quickly. Faintly, through the howling wind, I thought I heard a knock on the door. I wasn't sure. It could have just been a branch hitting the window. But the knocking grew louder and more insistent. Over the storm, I heard someone shouting my name. "Ethan! Ethan!" Without even stopping to put on shoes, I ran to the door and undid the lock. The moment I pulled the door open, I was pulled into a tight, cold embrace. "Clara, what are you doing here?" I asked, bewildered. She held me, her voice trembling. "Next time you leave, you have to tell me." She was scared. I felt so guilty that I couldn't come up with a single excuse. All I could do was mumble, "Okay." The hotel's backup generator finally kicked in, but it only powered the emergency lights and the fire safety systems. Clara was soaked to the bone and hadn't brought anything with her. She was now sitting on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a thick blanket from the closet. "How did you get here?" I asked. It felt like the entire city was underwater. Planes couldn't fly in this weather. Her lips were pale, and her eyes were filled with a pain I'd never seen before. "I drove," she said quietly. "The roads were bad, and a section of the highway was closed, so I had to take the back roads." "Don't be so reckless next time," I said, a delayed sense of fear finally hitting me as I imagined her driving through that storm. "I don't want to be," she said, looking straight at me. "But if I'm not, you'll just disappear again." In the dim hotel light, her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Some things sound cheesy when you say them out loud, but not saying them feels like you're suffocating. Her driving all the way here in a typhoon was the last straw for my frayed nerves. My pent-up emotions needed an outlet. "What is your deal?" I demanded, my voice rising. "I chased you for 7 years. Do you just love the feeling of knowing I'll always be there whenever you turn around? I still remember every single word you said to me back then. Don't you dare tell me you regret it. and want to get back together now. I hold grudges." Clara just looked at me, flustered and speechless. The wind was still howling outside, making the large glass window panes bulge inward as if they were about to shatter. "Quick! The bathroom!" Clara grabbed my hand with one hand and clutched the blanket with the other, pulling us into the small, windowless bathroom. It was the safest place to be. The power went out again, plunging us into complete darkness. I was a little scared and reached out, fumbling in the dark. "Don't move," she whispered. I think I accidentally touched her eye. She grabbed my hand and pulled me onto her lap as she sat on the closed toilet lid. I shifted awkwardly, but she held my waist firmly. "Just for a little while," she murmured. "I'm so tired." She rested her head on my shoulder, seeming so incredibly vulnerable. I didn't move. I just let her lean on me. After all, she had been driving through a storm all day just to find me. "Ethan," she said softly, "I went to your place today to find you. Your neighbor told me you left with your luggage early this morning. Do you know how I felt? I felt like my entire world was collapsing. I waited 2 years for you to come back, and I didn't even get to tell you that I like you before you left again." My heart was pounding against my ribs. My throat ached like it was being cut with a knife. "I was just on a business trip," I managed to say. I heard the sound of steady breathing next to my ear. Clara had fallen asleep. She had told me she liked me, and now my own emotions were a complete mess, and I couldn't calm down. The power flickered on and off. The blanket had slipped from her shoulders, revealing more than was appropriate. The consequence of staying in one position for so long was that half my body was completely numb. I couldn't even lift my hand. There was a loud crash from the other room, and wind seeped in through the cracks in the bathroom door. Clara woke with a start and pulled me tighter. "What was that?" she whispered. Right now I was so incredibly grateful that she was here. The floor beneath us was trembling slightly. "The window probably got blown out by the wind," she said. She said it so casually, but my eyes widened in shock. "I've been through this a few times in the 2 years I was down south," she explained. "Don't be scared. I'm here." I was terrified. I had to say something, anything to distract myself. People tend to speak from the heart when they're scared. "Why did you give up the guaranteed spot in grad school? Everyone said it was because of me." "I needed to make money," she answered simply. "I needed money to take care of my mom. And to marry you. I've been getting my finances in order for you for a long time." She said it with such startling certainty. "Are you crazy? What if I never came back?" It wasn't just a what if. I had seriously considered it. "Then I would have come to find you," she said without hesitation. "I already have my passport and visa." The lights went out completely again. In the pitch-black darkness, my face was burning, warm lips pressed against mine. Her breath filled my mouth, and I instinctively turned my head away, dodging the kiss. This wasn't the answer I wanted. By the time the wind died down, it was already bright outside. The window in the room was gone, shattered completely. The scene below was even more devastating. The sky in the distance was a bleak gray, and the entire street looked like a piece of clothing that had been wrung out in a washing machine. The hotel staff moved me to a new, undamaged room. Once the power was fully restored, my phone didn't stop buzzing with notifications from my family, my boss, and my colleagues. I replied to each of them, letting them know I was fine. Then, Mark video called me. The thunderstorm back home had earned him a day off from work. "How are things over there? I was scared to death watching the news," he said. "I'm fine. I got here before the typhoon really hit. Last night was pretty scary, though. The window in my room was blown out." He didn't believe me and demanded to see if the window was just shoddily made. "See? The quality is fine. The typhoon was just too strong." I turned the camera around to show him the new window, and it landed right on Clara, who was wearing a white hotel bathrobe and lounging on a chaise by the wall. "Ethan!" Mark yelled, his eyes wide. I quickly ended the video call. "What are you doing sitting there?" I demanded, my face flushing. Now there was no explaining my way out of this. "Part of the hotel was damaged, so getting any available room was lucky," she said, a triumphant look on her face. "Am I so shameful that I can't be seen?" News about Clara and me being stranded together in a hotel during a typhoon spread like wildfire through the alumni group chat. Mark, I later learned, made a small fortune from the bets and texted me saying he'd treat me to a big dinner. I couldn't continue my work, so my boss told me to stay safe and come back when the weather improved. The hotel wasn't far from Clara's company branch office. Her car had been flooded, so she had her company driver pick us up. I went with her to her office. It was quite large and clearly in a growth phase, buzzing with activity. "Oh, Clara, thank God you're back. I've been so busy I haven't even had time to eat," her colleague Sarah said, so relieved to see her that she didn't notice me at first. Clara gave her a little nudge. "Whoa, no way, is that really you, Ethan?" "Hi, Sarah," I said. She rolled her eyes, a smile on her face. "I'm treating tonight. A bunch of our old classmates work here. We should all get together." They barely got a few more words in before they were both dragged away to deal with work emergencies. I sat on the sofa in Clara's private office watching her work. It's true what they say. A woman working hard is the most beautiful thing. I got so bored waiting that I eventually fell asleep. In my dream, I was back in my freshman year of college. At the end of the welcome party, we all had to write down our wishes for the future. Clara had written, "Make money." Sarah treated us all to dinner that night, and it turned out to be a mini reunion with our old classmates who now worked for Clara. Their hostility toward me was a bit more subtle than Chloe's had been, but it was definitely there. "Clara, you two getting back together this time is a pretty high-risk investment," one of them said. "The assessment shows you're likely to lose your initial investment." Another one chimed in. "So, you came back because you got tired of the girls overseas and decided you missed our Clara after all? We don't accept freeloaders here." Clara squeezed my hand under the table and then held it up for everyone to see. "Don't talk nonsense," she said, her voice firm. "This time I'm the one chasing him and he still hasn't said yes." She looked at me with puppy dog eyes, a playful expression that completely disarmed everyone. The table was stunned into silence. Clara really had changed. "Oh my God, the sickeningly sweet smell of love. You're making all us single people nauseous," Sarah said with an exaggerated groan, breaking the tension. She poured a glass of wine and toasted us. "Clara has been through a lot these past 2 years, working like 10 people just to make enough money to marry him. We've all seen it. No hard feelings, guys. We just wish you two the best and a lifetime of happiness." After a few more drinks, the atmosphere lightened up considerably. They talked about what had happened over the past 2 years, turning their hardships and struggles into jokes. Listening to them felt like tiny needles pricking my heart. It turned out that while I was abroad, heartbroken and miserable, she hadn't been having an easy time either. Suddenly, all those past rejections didn't seem to matter anymore. The truth was, I had never really hated her. Just then, my sister Sophie showed up at the restaurant. She did not look happy. She must have found out where I was from David. "Dad wants you two to come home," she said, her eyes sizing up Clara. "Okay," Clara said simply. She took my hand again, right in front of my sister. A look of surprise flashed in Sophie's eyes, and then, unexpectedly, she smiled. When Clara went to meet my dad, she brought a suitcase with her. Inside was everything she had earned in the past 2 years. Financial statements, deeds, and business plans. The moment the study door closed behind them, my heart trembled. As long as I could remember, That door was only ever closed when something major was happening in our family. Sophie leaned against the wall, looking at me with a lazy, teasing expression. 2 years ago, right before you graduated, Dad went to see her, she said casually. I nodded. I had already guessed as much. Her attitude wouldn't have done a complete 180, and she wouldn't have said those cruel things to me unless something significant had happened. What bothered me was that she never even asked me about it. She just took a position against me. Back in high school, when you were chasing her all over the place, I went to see her too, Sophie added. I glared at her, shocked that their interference had started so early. That girl has some sense, Sophie continued. What do you mean? I asked. I gave her a hard time, but she never fought back. I kicked her in the shin and then did it again. Sophie winced at the memory and dodged my angry glare, pointing at the closed door to tell me to be quiet. I wasn't being too rough. I just wanted to scare her a little. I didn't expect her to be so resilient. In the end, Dad had to step in. I stared at the study door, my heart twisting in my chest. What did Clara, a soon-to-be graduate with an uncertain future, go through 2 years ago at the hands of my family? About an hour later, the study door opened. When Clara came out, she was smiling. Not bad. You did it in just 2 years, Sophie said, patting Clara on the shoulder. I remembered my sister as being arrogant and rarely praising anyone. Clara looked a little shy, but the way she looked at me was sincere and passionate. So they had done all this behind my back. It didn't feel good to be kept in the dark. I turned and walked away with a cold expression. Clara chased after me. Once we were outside, she grabbed my wrist and pulled me into her car. Why didn't you tell me? I yelled. I'm not a child. Why does everyone else get to make decisions for me without ever asking me? That was what really bothered me. Clara looked at me, her eyes welling up with tears. Ethan, your father was right. As a poor student with no prospects, I couldn't give you a future or the life you deserved. Love and passion would eventually fade, and our 7 years together would have become a lifelong nightmare. I wanted what was best for you, and I also wanted to push myself to see what I was really made of. It took me 2 years to fulfill my promise to him. I wanted to see you as soon as possible, to be with you forever. Ethan, I'm not made of wood. If I didn't like you, how could there have been those 7 years? She hugged me tightly, her voice muffled and choked with emotion. Almost everyone around me had told me that her choices, her sacrifices, were all for me. Today, all the mysteries were solved, but instead of relief, I felt even more lost. My mind was a mess. I thought about it for a few days. Then I went to my office and resigned from my job. My boss just smiled knowingly. Congratulations. I'll be waiting for the wedding invitation. I didn't bother to explain. I went home and laid it all out for my parents. I want to go abroad again. I have connections and a career path there now. I'm still young, and I don't want to rely on anyone for the rest of my life. My mom got emotional and looked at my dad in a panic. Does she know? He asked me quietly. I'll tell her, I replied. If you insist on this, he said after a long pause, we'll support you. If I was only 80% sure about my decision when I said it, my dad's approval gave me 100% confidence. When Clara heard the news, she was silent for a long time. Nothing in life was ever set in stone. The prince and princess living happily ever after. That kind of fairy tale ending is often just the beginning of another, more complicated story. Go, she finally said, her smile bittersweet. I support you. She wouldn't try to make me stay. I left the country with a grand send-off. This time was completely different from when I left right after graduation. All my friends and family came to the airport to see me off. Don't forget that big dinner you owe me, Mark said, giving me a hug goodbye. He had lost the bet and was already thinking about that dinner. My mom's eyes were red from crying, but my dad was full of pride. "Don't worry about us. Just take care of yourself over there," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. Sophie was still worried. "Are you sure you don't want me to come over and help you get settled? I can at least find you an apartment." "It's all taken care of. Stop worrying about me," I told her. "Ethan, you really have impressed me." Finally, it was Clara's turn. She stood at the edge of the crowd, constantly on her phone, looking busy. Our eyes met across the departure hall. She hung up and smiled at me. A warm, gentle smile. The first time we met was also in the fall. She had found a textbook I'd lost in the library. "Aren't you going to say goodbye?" I asked as I walked toward her. "It's not like we'll never see each other again," she replied calmly. "No need to be so dramatic." We just waved goodbye from a distance. 6 months after I went abroad, Clara opened a branch of her company in my city. That's when I finally understood what she had said at the airport that day. I just hadn't expected her plan to unfold this way. Work was busy, and I traveled a lot for business. I always made sure to let her know when I was leaving. She flew back and forth between the two countries, often bringing food that our moms had cooked for us. Clara had lost her father when she was very young and was raised by her mom, who sold snacks from a small stall to make a living. One evening, we were sitting in my apartment talking. "When did you first start liking me?" I asked her. She smiled. "The moment you ate that huge handful of fried skewers from my mom's stall, I thought, how could there be a boy in this world who's so easy to feed? It wouldn't cost much to raise you." I laughed. "Did you open a branch here just to chase after me?" "Don't be so full of yourself," she retorted. "I did it purely for the money." I pretended to hit her, and she laughed and dodged out of the way. Our life together was warm and comfortable. I majored in stage design abroad and started working at a well-known studio. Eventually, one of my designs won a major international award. On a magnificent stage, under brilliant lights, I held the heavy trophy and gave my acceptance speech, thanking Clara and my family, who were all sitting in the audience. They were beaming with pride. It turned out that more than wanting me to have a secure, easy life, they wanted me to achieve my dreams and shine on my own terms. Love isn't about compromise and sacrifice. It's about helping each other become the best versions of yourselves. 3 years later, in the middle of a beautiful summer, Clara and I returned home and got married. 2 years after that, she gave birth to our son. Having a child at 30, Clara had our moms worried sick outside the delivery room. My dad, who was usually as steady as a rock, also had tears in his eyes when he saw that Clara and the baby were safe. When he saw me, he clapped me hard on the shoulder, a silent gesture of pride and welcome to fatherhood. Sophie later told me that while Clara was in labor, I was holding her hand the whole time, my own eyes red and my voice choked with emotion. The moment I saw our son for the first time, my legs went weak, my face turned pale, and I almost fainted. On weekends, Clara and I would take our son to my parents' house. Clara and my dad would play with our son, who was just learning to walk, in the sprawling garden. One afternoon, I was in my old room tidying things up. A dusty photo frame was buried at the bottom of a drawer. It was from when I was 8 years old, when my dad took me to Denmark to see the Little Mermaid statue. In the photo, I was standing by the sea, smiling brightly. The frame was old and the clasp was loose. The photo fell out. On the back, written in my dad's elegant handwriting, was a single line of small text. "I hope the happiest days of your life are not the ones I gave you." My eyes welled up, and a single tear rolled down my cheek. The large calligraphy scroll hanging in my dad's study was made up of my sister's name and mine. He had always had hopes for me, his son, that were just as high as the ones he had for my sister. He hoped I would find a good partner, showcase my talents, and live a brilliant life of my own making. Clara came back into the room holding our son, their shared laughter filling the quiet space. I opened my arms, and she handed me our soft, cuddly son, and I held him close. "Wash hands, drink milk, Mommy hold you?" Clara said in a sing-song voice, trying to take our son back. The little guy pretended to reach for her, then snuggled deeper into my arms, babbling happily and making me want to cover him in kisses. It was a silly game, but the two of them were having the time of their lives. After we cleaned him up, our son was tired and quickly fell asleep in his travel cot. Clara leaned over his little bed, looking at his rosy cheeks with a doting smile. "That little girl in our son's toddler class is always smiling at him like a fool," she grumbled under her breath. "I can tell she's up to no good." "Honey, they're only 1 year and 2 months old," I said, rolling my eyes. "People are set in their ways from a young age," she retorted, unconvinced. "My son needs to stay away from little girls with impure intentions. Don't worry, son. Mommy will protect you." I rolled my eyes a few more times. "What were you and Dad talking about downstairs?" I asked, curious. "Oh, you know," she said with a sly grin. "Dad was passing down his secret guide to vetting future daughters-in-law." I smirked. No wonder Sophie had been complaining since she was a kid that she might not be their biological child. "Honey, once things calm down at work, let's take our son on a trip," Clara said, wrapping her arms around my waist from behind as I stood looking out the window. I rested my head back on her shoulder. "That sounds nice, but Sophie will be so jealous." My sister's love life wasn't exactly a success story. She was getting up there in age and was still single. These days, finding someone to love isn't easy. "Honey, I'm so glad I met you," Clara whispered, kissing my cheek. "The best days of my life have all been because of you." The sky outside had turned a deep indigo. The first stars were beginning to appear. I looked at our son sleeping soundly in his little bed, at Clara snuggled up beside me, and thought of the family that loved me so fiercely. "No," I said, turning to face her. "You are my best days."